Well, hello, everyone, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. And welcome to the 21R Logistics Readiness Officer Cadet Town Hall. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Brian Campbell, the Force Development Representative for our career field. And joining me today is Captain Erica Chapman, my partner in crime, and our talent management team from the Air Force Personnel Center, Major Liz Tawari and Captain Jess Hobkirk. Collectively, our job is training, educating, and developing the almost 1,400 logistics readiness officers in the United States Air Force. And let me just start by saying thank you. Thank you for serving. Thank you for dialing in today. We're excited to have you in the Air Force family and to talk a little bit about logistics for a few minutes. So I'll be direct. My goal is for every one of you to walk away from today and pick 21R, Logistics Readiness Officer, as your top career field choice. And believe it or not, what you want to do, it really does matter, as the folks at OLEA can tell you. So in order to do that, we're going to walk through a little bit of logistics. So Erica, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So here's a snapshot of what we're going to talk about today. As we get into a few details, there's just one thing I really want you to remember throughout this, and that's no matter what your background, no matter what your major, no matter what your prior job or life experience, you can thrive as an LRO, and we want you to be part of our family. I'm confident that all of you have been exposed to logistics, whether through work or at least as a customer. And so let me provide a few examples for you. I know you're familiar with major companies that do logistics. You know them, you rely on them. In short, logistics impacts our daily lives in almost every way. Whether it's fuel for your car, groceries for your refrigerator, or the clothes that you're wearing right now. And you all lived through COVID-19, so you know what it's like when the things you want or need aren't on the shelves, when you can't order them, when delivery times increase 2 or 3-fold, or costs become prohibitive. And that's even more true in the Air Force. A late delivery, a missed sortie, and a terrorist lives another day, or a peer competitor is no longer deterred and decides to challenge the U.S. more directly. Very simply, we're offering you an opportunity to be part of the logistics enterprise. And it doesn't matter what degree you have, whether it's management, criminal justice, biology, computer science, mechanical engineering. We need and want a diverse team, diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, diverse thought, and understanding of processes across the logistics enterprise. And now we're going to show a little video that'll give you a better understanding of what we do for Air Force logistics.
Some people call us behind-the-scenes airmen. They say they're not sure what we do or how we do it. They just know it gets done. You may not always see us, but if you look close enough, you'll see our fingerprints. They're everywhere. Nothing in this Air Force moves without us. We're quick thinkers and even quicker movers. We're problem solvers. Any contingency you can imagine, we've prepared for it. There's a lot of us, and we do a lot of different things. We're planners and fixers, transporters and suppliers. But we're one team, one voice. We are Loggies, Logistics, Readiness, Airmen. One look at our warehouses, our labs, our vehicles, and you'll probably call us perfectionists. And you'd be right. We're meticulous in every task because mistakes mean mission failure, and failure is not in our vocabulary. We transport the nation's most valuable cargo. We ready you for deployment and deploy alongside you. We arrange for our airmen to come home, all of our airmen. In times of war and times of peace, times of disaster and times of joy, we're there to equip you, move you, fuel you. Readiness happens long before any mission. It's not an option, it's our job, our middle name. Rain or shine, day or night, we're ready so you can be. Can you see us now?
As you just saw in that video, logistics fingerprints are everywhere. This slide highlights the range of different logistics squadrons that we have across the Air Force, from contingency response squadrons that deploy to remote non-fixed airfields and establish air cargo and passenger terminal operations within hours of arrival, to a full-up aerial port squadron that's a major air terminal for passenger and cargo movement on worldwide channel, contingency, and surface missions. We have supply chain squadrons. We have material management squadrons responsible for the global distribution of parts, vehicles, and equipment. We have special operations logistics squadrons that support the full spectrum of logistics needs and enable the mobilization process and rapid response to support the soft global network. And finally, our bread and butter, the Logistics Readiness Squadron, that supports a wide range of logistics functions, supply, transportation, fuel, vehicles, and war planning at or for a specific installation. And as I alluded to just a second ago, across these different squadrons, we break logistics down into functions. And you might also hear them referred to as strategic areas. So let me start with transportation. Transportation, commonly the loading and downloading of cargo and packs for the mobility air fleet, is something that we do in logistics every day. The 44th Aerial Port Squadron, as you can see in the picture, is loading a C-130 with 160,000 pounds of donations for Operation Christmas Drop, an annual humanitarian mission. The 46th Airport Squadron at Dover sends vehicles via airlift to a week-long readiness exercise to demonstrate its capability to mobilize and operate in a simulated, contested, and degraded environment. They also were integral in pushing missions to support the defense of Ukraine. And maybe some of you have heard about the Afghan retrograde, loggies on the ground in Afghanistan loading people onto aircraft to get them out of harm's way. Not only were they loading them to get them out, but receiving them at installations, both foreign and in the United States, to ensure their safe arrival and their care. In addition to transportation, logistics includes fuels. May not sound the greatest to pump gas for a government vehicle, but I tell you what, POL is much more than that. Don't get me wrong, you'll be able to fuel an aircraft, but think about the myriad ways that fuel has an impact. There are all sorts of special fueling operations, refueling aircraft under fire and in austere locations. The 51st LRS helped prepare and sustain and recover Anderson Air Force Base from Typhoon Mawar in May 22nd to June 5th, 2023. The team shifted their focus to help the 36th LRS secure 60 million gallons of fuel and 30 refueling assets, protecting $245 million in supplies from the storm. The 8th LRS at Kunsan, their fuels management flight, commonly known as POL for petroleum, oils, and lubricants, keeps the Wolfpack fleet of F-16 Fighting Falcons energized, delivering 11 million gallons of fuel that support over 55,000 sorties annually. The flight's charged to manage and deliver fuel across the installation for countless vehicles, used to transport equipment, personnel, and assets. POL airmen work around the clock, making sure the infrastructure supports fuel delivery, making sure that that fuel is tested, and making sure that it's delivered to the right place at the right time. Speaking of delivering things to the right place at the right time, supply is also an integral part of logistics. Warehousing and design layouts, ensuring maintenance and other base customers have the parts and equipment that they need to support operational missions. And responding to global threats and priorities by shifting or sending parts around the globe. COVID is a practical example. The supply flight secured things that were impossible to find. So during COVID, gloves, hand sanitizer, paper towel, cleaning products of any kind became extremely hard to procure and to keep track of. But supply was on it. Securing those assets, storing them, and issuing them in accordance with wing commander priorities to ensure their operational capability. And if something happens on the globe, no matter what geographic area, supply will literally begin moving vehicles and equipment across the globe to meet that demand. Anything from a non-combatant evacuation to the Ukraine support I talked about earlier. Parts, equipment, and vehicles, a global presence ensuring that every operator has what they need to execute. Speaking of executing operations, the other thing we do in logistics is war planning, sometimes referred to as logistics planning. But installation deployment officers are an integral part of the Logistics Readiness Squadron, and they ensure hundreds of people, tons of cargo, and aircraft depart and arrive on time to support key national defense priorities from the President and the Secretary of Defense. It isn't like packing for a vacation when you go to war. It takes deliberate planning, sequencing, and collaborating with organizations to support follow on forces to make sure that the right assets, the right people, the right equipment arrive at the right time and in the right order. And logistics planners take center stage when a unit is called into action. And beyond the daily operations in Logistics Squadron, there's also a large backbone of logistics as well, most best illustrated by life cycle sustainment. So there are requirements for logistics that extend well beyond an aircraft ever takes off. We have aircraft depots that do complete overhauls of individual aircraft, literally stripping them down to the frame and rebuilding them. As logisticians, we have the opportunity to be a part of that process through parts acquisition, increasing velocity, and aiding and assisting the teams that are working on those aircraft to make sure that they get back out to the field as quickly as possible. And finally, our most important resource is people. As a logistics readiness officer, you will be responsible, most likely, for somewhere between 30 and 150 people as soon as you come into the United States Air Force. Now, this may seem daunting, but leadership will be the best experience you ever have in the United States Air Force. Very few other AFSCs gives you this breadth and depth of leadership opportunity as a lieutenant. You will have the opportunity to succeed and fail as a team. And to be frank, teams always accomplish more than individuals. In many environments, that team you have will be your family. You're there to support them, and they're there to support you. There's so much more we could talk about, but at this point, I want to turn it over to Captain Erica Chapman to talk a little bit about the logistics career path.
Thank you, sir. So as you can see from the beginning of our presentation, there are so many aspects of the logistics that we touch as LROs. So we've developed a logistics career field planning tool, which is the multi-path framework. This is a human capital development model that identifies the strategic areas that LROs can serve in and maps out the optimal education, training, and functional experiences that you can do to achieve this development. So the product consists of 10 strategic areas that we as LROs can serve in as colonels and 06s. And these positions we serve across the DAF, NATO, Allied, and Joint. So there are a plethora of opportunities that we have there. And one thing that a multipath framework does is it gives you the opportunity to chart your own career path across these wide range of functional areas. If you want to move into special operations and conduct just logistics that we also can't talk about on this platform, then you can do that. If you want to work in humanitarian assistance in the contingency response realm and do things like helping deployments and assisting with natural disasters like hurricanes or earthquakes, you can do that. And this tool gives you just a layout of what you can do as a logistics readiness officer. And also the good news is, as you're trying to chart your career path, you're not alone. So if you're passionate in a particular area, we have people in place to help you do this. So you have the TMT team at AFPC that'll chart what assignments you're going to. You have us in Force Development that will help you map out what you want to do and develop in as an LRO. It's definitely a holistic process. So from the time you commission as a logistics readiness officer, which we hope you all do, until the time you separate or retire, this is your journey and there are people here to help you. If you want to go take advantage of special programs like going to Tesla or FedEx and working that, we're here to help you get to where you want to be. And most importantly, since you're thinking, wow, this LRO gig sounds super cool, all the places we can go, all the functions that we can participate in, what do they look like for logistics readiness officers? Well, I have some great news for you. So this is just a map of our US military bases, but we really want to use this to show you that logistics is pervasive. So whether you want to go to Hawaii or Germany or Italy, then there's probably an LRO position in these very pristine locations. So again, LROs are everywhere. We have an LRO currently in Australia serving with our Aussie partners with the F-35. We have LROs working in AFRICOM with our allied and joint partners over there. We have LROs in South America working a POW MIA special mission, helping make sure that we get those remains home. We have LROs all around the world, and these are your opportunities as an LRO. So you definitely have a network to take advantage of, not like other AFSCs where you might be pigeonholed into certain location, whether that's based on your mission. LROs are needed everywhere. So keep that in mind as you're putting your preferences in. And then one thing we also want to hammer home is our outreach and transparency within the career field. We take that to heart. So this might be the first time you're seeing this slide, but it won't be the last as you commission as an LRO. So we embrace transparency and we want to make our contacts known. So you can see there, we brief this at all of our outreach. A lieutenant knows who their career field manager is. They know who their talent management team is. We focus on making things accessible and available so that everyone can succeed as an LRO. We also use platforms such as AVOLV, where we will publish all of our recorded informational sessions. We have monthly events like Logistics Education and Assignment News, where you have the ear of your assignment team, where you can ask, oh, is this space getting open? Where do you see me going next? We make that an open platform, and transparency and communication is at the heart of what we do. You'll also hear from your career field manager about what's happening with logistics, maybe on the enterprise or headquarters level, getting that perspective from your senior leaders. And you're also able to ask questions openly. These contacts are made available. If you need to make a phone call, we're here. As LROs, we're here for each other, and we want to see each other succeed. And if that's not enough, we also travel to your units to get outreach. So if your unit wants to know more about assignments, you can reach out to us, and then we will go to your unit and provide a briefing just so you can get that insight. But we promise you, as an LRO, you will have communication and transparency within the career field, and that sets us apart. And next, I'll turn it back over to Colonel Campbell.
Hey, thanks, Erica. So we purposely kept this a little bit short to offer an opportunity for you all to ask some questions. And so we are happy to talk about logistics all day, and we would love to do that because that's what we've been doing, in my case, for like 20 years. But instead of that, I would rather throw it out to you and say, what questions do you have about the Logistics Readiness Officer career field? And I see we have an ROTC instructor joining us today too, so that's awesome. Hey.
Howdy, sir. This is Captain Walters, also a 21R, so I'm glad to kind of pop in on this, listen to the team. So I guess mostly to ask for the crowd, you'll have any specific bases that y'all want to highlight from your experience on, and what good bases look like, and if there's any bad bases, and kind of how you got through those kind of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share that, and great question. So I'll tell you, I started out at Elmendorf Air Force Base, which is now Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska. And so, coming from a small town in the Midwest and a relatively small school, that was 3,500 miles from home. So it's not like I'm going to be seeing my family or doing anything else. I barely knew what Alaska was as a cadet, and so I found myself in a very unique situation. Living far away from home on my own, and it was great. I will tell you that I had great squadron teammates that helped me get settled, that helped me figure out life, kind of alone and unafraid, because it's very different when you're living on a college campus versus when you're, signing a lease for your first apartment and now you've got bills to pay and, life happens. And so that was awesome to have a great team. And then my first job as a logistics readiness officer was actually doing combat mobility. So we were doing airdrop. So my job was airdrop mission. So we were loading aircraft with, you know, cargo, typically just kind of it's almost like it's a cargo mock-up, and then pack big giant parachutes, and then they drop it out of the back of C-130s or C-17s, and then we would go out to the drop zone with tractor trailer trucks and other types of uh, 10K ATs, big forklifts, and we'd pick that stuff up and bring it back and load it again and do it the next day, all to make sure that the air crews were qualified to do airdrop missions. So, long way from home. It was definitely not number one on my overall priority list to go to Alaska, but it was a great assignment. I really loved it, and if I ever had the chance to go back, I would. Um, the ones I think that were toughest are probably deployments, from a family and personal side. From a professional side, it's some of the most rewarding work you do, right? In my case, deployed to Iraq and deployed to Afghanistan. So I had the opportunity to go down range and work with the Army, doing a lot of fielding in Iraq. So we were equipping the Iraqis with Humvees and equipment so they could do their own route clearance and things like that. And then in Afghanistan, we were training. Working part of the NATO training mission. And so, obviously, you're separated from family. You're living in a tiny little cell of an apartment, and really all you do is work, go to the gym, eat, and sleep. And in whatever order you choose to do those is completely appropriate, because it's pretty much just those things that you do all the time. And so it's difficult, I think, to be away from your family and to live through that. But it's also an incredibly rewarding experience in the sense that you meet people from countries, you go to places you never thought you'd go. You just have an opportunity to impact people's lives in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. And you make some of the best friends you'll ever meet, because there's nothing like being deployed and in a combat environment to bring people closer together who have to go through that same experience with you. So I would share those as kind of my initial assignment, and some of the most rewarding and also challenging times. But often we find that's the case. The more challenging something is, the more rewarding it is when you've accomplished it. And I'll throw it out to the rest of the team if anyone else has something to share too.
Sure. This is Captain Jess Hobkirk. I'm part of your talent management team here at AFPC. I've had the amazing experience to be stationed overseas 3 times throughout my career. So I did a couple of years in Ramstein, Germany, a couple of years in Aviano, Italy, and then I did my short tour over at Incirlik, Turkey. So it's been a rough career. But I think, to your point, Captain Walters, there's no bad base. It is 100% what you want to make it. I also was stationed in Oklahoma City, so beautiful Tinker, and then Davis Monthan and Tucson, Charleston, South Carolina, and now here at Randolph, San Antonio. So it's 100% what you make it, and just expectation management from the team. No matter where we send you, we are sending you to a great team. There is no bad team in the United States Air Force. So embrace it, hope for the best. Put Hawaii on your list if you want to go to Hawaii. But if it doesn't work out, I promise you we're sending you to amazing teams that are going to really teach you the greatness that is logistics. So I really hope y'all come over to our side and get to see the awesomeness that we would deal with every single day.
Definitely appreciate the input. Thank y'all so much.
Have you got a good story for us, Captain Walters?
Well, suppose I think I started off back at one of the bad bases. My first LRO assignment was at DIVIDS back in 2015, to which we started off a little bit in a rough patch because a lot of people deployed. Work was just super busy. Have a new commander in who was able to help us kind of realign a lot of the operations we were doing, go through processes. I was ultimately able to kind of rally the team, gave me a lot of good experiences, got some supply and transportation at that base. And then the team was just super tight, kind of to y'all's point. It definitely made up for, middle of West Texas, not a whole lot to do, but the team gelled and we were able to get a lot of stuff done, a lot of development. And then from there I went to Nellis, which if anyone has happened to have been there for Red Flag, anything else like that, I know it's busy. Learned a lot there just through networking and kind of getting to see the bigger maintenance picture, because there's a whole bunch of flying units out there. Deployed 3 times, Afghanistan, Kuwait, and the UAE, doing advising and decking. Last LRO kind of tour was Fort Greg Adams, Virginia, where we have the 2T2, 2TO schoolhouse for enlisted initial skills. Got to learn a lot of kind of what we do in the joint aspect, especially because joint logistics course and a couple of the other higher level log courses are up there. But I guess kind of all that, the big lesson I'm have taken is just to be flexible and be ready to network. You're going to meet so many people and they're going to be able to help you through different situations down the line. I know that was kind of a long version, not just a particular instance. Apologies for and appreciate everyone's patience for sitting through that. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. That's good. It is amazing. Some of the bases we think are going to be the worst end up turning out to have, we meet families or we meet friends there that, you end up having for life. And so it's like, maybe it didn't seem like the best on paper, but it was meant to be. Like I was meant to be in that place for that time for that reason. And sometimes it's an operational requirement, and you never know what's going to kick off where. So, yeah, thanks for sharing. And then, do any of the cadets have questions? Do you all have anything for us?
So actually, most of the cadets are out during spring break. So I'm kind of taking notes for them. I'll try and give them either this video and or just the LRO rundown, kind of when everyone gets back up and running.
Hey, thanks. I heard one come online.
Hello, sir. I am Cadet Pay. I'm an AS400 cadet. I'm going to be commissioning soon as a 21R. And I had a question on, as a brand new second lieutenant coming into the force, what's like the biggest piece of advice you give in terms of learning about the career field and getting situated?
Hands down, talk to your senior NCOs. I will say that the person who had the most influence on me as a young officer was Master Sergeant Lance Cagle and then Chief Master Sergeant David Chambers. Those 2 individuals shaped my leadership more than any officer or enlisted person has since, because they were the first people I had contact with, and they were who I was attached to the hip to as a lieutenant, because I didn't have, as a lieutenant, 20 years ago, there were a lot of lieutenants in the squadron. And so a lot of us were kind of running around alone and unafraid out there getting stuff done. And you may find yourself in a similar position where you're a lieutenant and you're an OIC and it's you and the 30, 40, 50 person team you've got, and you are just getting work done. And so you're going to be in a situation where I would highly recommend you talk to your senior NCOs, whether that's a master sergeant, a senior, or a chief, because they will have spent an awful lot of time in professional military education, and they probably have about 20 years on you in service time. And they've lived through an awful lot of life and an awful lot of leadership experiences that they've had with airmen that they've supervised from the time they were a senior airman or staff sergeant. So that would be my piece of advice: is really find someone who you trust, who you've built that trust with, and then latch onto them and learn absolutely as much as you can from them. Because if you're able to do that, I think you'll learn more from them than you will in any subsequent opportunity you have in the Air Force.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. And I don't know if hey, how's it going? Go ahead.
The question I have is, what is the work-life balance like? As someone with a wife and kids already, family life is important to me. So I was just wondering, like, what's the day-to-day like, and how often are deployments and everything like that?
Yeah, I'll tell you that. So that is a bit of a difficult question to answer because a lot of that depends on, what assignment you go to and where you're at. So there are lots of jobs in the logistics readiness officer community that you would consider more 9 to 5 type jobs. And I don't mean 9 to 5 in the sense that you're going to stroll into the office at 9 and leave at 5, but I mean in the sense that you're going to have relatively set hours and you're going to work during the week, right? Whether that's 7:30 to 4:30 or, whether that's 8 to 4:30, whatever it happens to be. But there are those positions. I would say though that it ebbs and flows, I think, is probably a better way to describe, what work-life balance is like, or work-life integration. Because there's times when, you're gonna have plenty of time. You're gonna have squadron functions and activities that are going on that you can bring the family to. There's gonna be wing level installation events that you're gonna be able to bring the family to, and you can integrate your family into what you do, which I've found to be extremely helpful. I tried to divorce the two, I think, when I was younger. I tried to see my life as, so this is my family time and this is my work time. But I'll tell you that when I was a squadron commander, I really tried to integrate it more, right? Is how do I bring my family to things that I can? How do I involve them in what we're doing as a squadron, as a base, as an installation? Because then instead of creating friction, you're actually creating a little bit of harmony in your family. So there is work-life balance. Some of the jobs you're going to go to are going to be a normal 9 to 5. There are other jobs that you're going to have where their demands are going to be significant. You may be asked to deploy. You're going to have to work weekends and nights because you've got some operational requirement going on. But that's not the be all end all the time. And then there's a certain amount of it that is going to be up to you. You're going to put into it, you're going to kind of get out of it what you put into it, right? I mean, if you come in and you work really hard and you are there all the time, it's probably going to show over time because you're going to be smarter than your peers. You're going to be more competent than your peers. You're going to be consistently showing that you are engaged in a way that your peers are not. On the flip side of that, if family is your priority, and you're not as engaged, and you aren't as committed, then it's over time, it's probably going to reflect in things like your records and the opportunities that you get and things like that. So I would just say, keep that in mind. Harmony is an important thing when you're considering family and military service. It's sometimes not an either or, but an and. And then, it's up to you a lot in how much time and energy you want to spend on the Air Force. But just know that you'll kind of get back out of it what you put into it. And again, I'm speaking in very general terms. Is that a helpful answer
Thank
to
you.
your question?
Yes, it is. So as far as, I guess, like, I'm trying to figure out how to ask the question I have in my head.
Just start throwing out words and we'll figure it out together.
So you mentioned, like, getting out of it what you put into it, and like I don't want it to be a thing where it's like, oh, I'm saying, like, family's my priority to the point where, like, the Air Force is just something I do on the side kind of thing. Like, that's not what I'm hinting at all. It's more of a thing where, and you touched on a little bit, where, as far as, like, including your family and a lot of the things, I guess it comes to more of a part of, like, I'm trying to figure out how to. I don't have the words to ask the question.
Well, let me give you
I
my
have.
my example. So I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at home, right? About to be 3 and 5. So I have two little girls. My wife's a physical therapist who works. So So what I will tell you is that the most important thing is open communication with my wife, right? So there are times when I know that coming up here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be TDY, like I'm going to be not here at home, I'm going to be on the road, and then I'm going to be TDY, and then I'm going to be back, and then I'm going to be TDY again. So there's going to be this like month-long period where my job is going to be a little bit more of a percentage of my life, and my wife is going to have to carry a little bit heavier load with making sure the girls get to and from their school slash daycare, and taking care of things on the home front a little bit. But I will tell you that 2 weeks ago, my wife went to a conference for physical therapy, right? She has to get her continuing education. So she went to there. So that week, I was the one who was working on making sure that the kids got to school and got home. And, I was, taking care of them over the weekends and stuff. So, like, yes, there are times when it will be challenging, right? Where it's going to be maybe not how you envision a work-life balance or harmony. But it's all things that you can manage and work, and it'll be dependent upon how much time you kind of want to spend and invest, and then where you want to spend and invest that time. There will be things you have to do in the Air Force. Like deployment isn't something you can just say, "Hey, I don't want to do that." If you get asked to deploy, you get told to deploy, and so you'll have to navigate those challenges like we all do. But it's not always deployments, right? It's not always working 24/7, 365. So there are a lot of times where, you're going to be able to have some Friday time with your kids, and you'll be able to, spend some time with your wife. You'll be able to take your leave and go on vacations. I mean, the Air Force is fortunate in that they afford you a lot of time off, and a lot of opportunities to do things, other than just be in an office every day all the time. So I would just offer that. Does that explanation help?
It does. I guess the original question was more so of like how family friendly the LRO career field is, because I know certain career fields aren't too family friendly. Like you're deploying 6 months out of the year, and then the other 6 months you're TDY. You know what I'm saying? So I guess it was more of a thing like, okay, well, can I excel in my career without putting my family on the back burner, kind of thing.
Sure, and I would say that's the exception in the LRO community, not the norm. There are some areas, there are some places you can go where you're going to deploy more than others, right? If you find yourself in certain squadrons that are, and I'll use AFSOC, the Air Force Special Operations Command, as an example. Like if you find yourself in AFSOC, chances are you're going to deploy at a little bit higher rate, and you're probably going to get asked to go TDY, I use in quotations, at a little bit higher rate than you would in, say, Air Mobility Command or PACAF or USAFE. But it's really hard to say as an overall career field. I would say the exception is deploying followed by, going TDY all the time, followed by deployments. The majority of logistics is you'll have a deployment, but you're going to spend the other, 3 or 4 years at home, and then you'll deploy again, kind of pace right now. That was very different back in 2004, 2005 timeframe, and it always has the potential to be different, if we go to war. But I think we'd be having a totally different conversation. So again, the norm is a much better balance and harmony, than you would have maybe in some of the other career fields you're talking about.
All right, thank you. You asked my question. I guess the follow-up question to that would be, just because you brought it up, like a wartime environment, what does LRO, the career field, look like in a wartime environment? If you have any insight
Yeah,
on that.
sure. It depends on the war. But for, like obviously going to war against a peer competitor is significantly different than going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. But what I would offer is that no matter what, as logisticians, the expectation is that you're going to be involved in it, and you're going to probably go forward. There will be some pockets of folks that do not, right? If you're in Air Mobility Command supporting that transportation function, and your job is to generate things from home station and push them downrange. But no matter what, if there's a war going on, we're going to have loggies in harm's way. And so I'm not going to paint some rosy picture that you can just come in and work from the CONUS and work 9 to 5. Like if that's what you're interested in, I would probably steer you away from logistics readiness. If a war kicks off, no matter what it is, we're going to have loggies at the front of that, at the front edge of that. They're going to be jets taking off, and there's going to be parts and supplies and support and fuel that they need, and there will be loggies manning those bases right along with the defenders, the security forces folks, civil engineers, making sure that they have places that they can go and operate from. So that's what I would offer is I don't see an environment in which we would have a war and not be heavily involved as logistics officers.
Thanks, sir.
Sir, I do want to just jump on to that, just to not paint an inaccurate picture, but what it looks like is not necessarily always terrifying. Colonel Campbell said that he's been in the Middle East. I've been in the Middle East. I just got back from a deployment to Africa. It is still an awesome experience. Yes, the threat is higher, obviously, and who knows what the next war is going to look like, but it is also the best experiences of your life. You will never be closer to those you're deployed with. You will never get better leadership opportunities than, to put all of our training to the test and to really see American air power at its finest. Like, it is amazing. Please don't let war scare you. We are trained very well to survive and to win. So don't want to scare people too much.
Sir, I had a question. I'm Cadet Pay from Det 075 San Diego State, and I just wanted to ask how you deal with work stress and how to kind of best output that in terms of a professional aspect.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I'll say is that we offer a few things in the logistics readiness portfolio. So for as you get higher, like one of the things you'll notice, you will be stressed. You will have moments of stress as a lieutenant. Like there are going to be times when you're stressed. So whether that's and it'll be different things that trigger you probably. So some people will get very stressed when they have to give a briefing to a senior leader. Some people will get very stressed when they have to do some operational requirement with no senior leadership at all, but they're the ones who are running it. Right. So a lot of it just depends on you and what you find stressful. And so what I would say, one is that the Air Force in general offers a lot of support and services for folks who are feeling stressed. And one of those that we particularly have fostered here in the A4 specific for logistics is Better Up Coaching. So Better Up Coaching is offered typically to squadron leadership positions because they're typically under significantly more stress even than the people who are of a low rank. But they coach in all kinds of things. From time management to nutrition to sleeping to leadership, right? They offer coaching services in all those different areas. And so that's one thing. One thing is coaching, right? The other thing is mentorship. So if you're finding yourself stressed, the thing I would rely on is the people who are around you, whether it's other lieutenants who you can get together with and vent with, or whether it's, your captain who's your supervisor or your operations officer. There's an opportunity for you to work with them, talk to them, build a relationship with them so that they can help mentor you through how to manage stress, how to work with it. Because, there will be times when you're going to be stressed, but the people around you will be the people who are able to help you navigate that. And for the most part, that works really well for most people. There are people, though, who experience real, debilitating stress. What I would say is debilitating stress or anxiety. And then the Air Force has specific ways that they will help come alongside you. The only thing I would say, and it's really important, and I use this term a lot as a commander, but man, don't suffer in silence, right? If you're struggling with something, if you're extremely stressed out, one of the things we ask for constantly in logistics community is transparency. So if you're struggling with something, you just got to talk to people, because I'm pretty confident that the resources are out there and available. If you're willing to talk about it and get the help that you need. And I'll say that's, again, the exception rather than the norm. We will help you manage stress as leaders. But there are situations where people can get overwhelmed. So I don't know which of those two things you're talking about.
Yes, sir. You've pretty much answered my question. And I appreciate the advice on how to get help, basically.
Yeah, just tell people, be honest and open with the people who you're working with and who you're working for. And there are a lot of resources available for sure. Thank you. These have been great questions. I really appreciate the interaction. Anything else?
Scott Walters again. Another question just for the group. You hit a little bit on, you're hoping to pull from all sorts of undergraduate education paths. What advice do you have as far as navigating your expectations for that advanced academic expectations, i.e., master's degree?
Yeah. So obviously, for promotion boards, advanced academic degrees, which means a master's or higher, are no longer masked. So the Air Force does take your master's degree into consideration for promotion. But what I would say is that you won't meet a board until major. So, so realistically, nobody's really looking at your CERF to see if you've got a master's degree. And I apologize for using acronyms here, but it's essentially like your Air Force resume. Nobody's really looking at your Air Force resume to see if you have a master's degree until you get to about the point where you're a major. So what I would encourage you to do, one, is if you have an opportunity to get it done early, just get it done. I mean, I started and finished my first master's as a lieutenant. I started it as a lieutenant, finished it as a captain, my first master's. So the earlier you get it done, you're never going to have more time than you do right now in your life. And I mean that quite literally. Never going to have more time than you do right now. Your life is only going to get more complicated by more responsibilities, more relationships, more kids, whatever it is, right? So take advantage of the time you have now to get a master's degree as soon as possible. As far as what your degree is in, so my undergraduate is in criminal justice and sociology. My first master's was in leadership and management, and then I went to a school for the Air Force, and so I have military operational art and science, right, as my other degree, which is the Air Force fully funded me to go to that one. So but I have a wide range of different, degrees. So none of them prepared me to be a logistician. All of them helped educate me on how to think and how to respond and how to act in ways that are helpful as a logistician. So there is no course that's going to be like, well, if you go through this course, you're going to be the best LRO ever. But there are certain opportunities that will help you grow and develop the way that you think, the way that you act, the way that you respond, that are going to help you be a better leader, a better officer. And we're interested in those skills as logisticians, and we will train and educate you on what you need to know for logistics through both our continuum of learning, like our purposeful courses, as well as on the job training, OJT.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Cadet Williams here. Are there any assignments that are like highly encouraged or sought after, like if you want to go far in your career?
I mean, not really. One of the challenges we had is in the 21R career field is understanding all the different options that are out there, and that's a lot about what Erica talked about is the multipath framework. So what we did is we determined what are those senior leader positions the Air Force asked us to fill, and then we worked our way backwards and said what are the training, education, and assignment opportunities. But the point being that there are 10 different strategic areas that the Air Force asks logisticians to serve that they need depth of knowledge and understanding. So legitimately, you can chart a path in any one of those 10 areas, and there is a leadership position, an O6 billet that links to that position for you. So any of those areas are going to be there's a path to go to become a senior leader. I would say though that we do have generic milestones. So we look for officers to have served a couple years at the base level. Do you have a core understanding in one of those squadrons that I showed on the slide? An LRS, a Logistics Readiness Squadron, an Aerial Port Squadron, an Air Mobility Squadron, Supply Chain Operations Squadron. Do you have that core backbone of logistics understanding? Then we look for things like staff. Have you served on a MAGCOM staff? Have you served as an operations officer? Have you gone to school and residence? Have you commanded? So a lot of those things will tell us. And then are you doing well in each one of the opportunities that you've been given, right? So when you're given an opportunity at a base, whether or not it's Dias or whether or not it's Hawaii, are you doing well when you're at that base? So if you go to Dias and crush it, and you go to Hawaii and you don't do very well, one of those officers is going to be set up for leadership opportunities and to be given more responsibility earlier in their career, much better than another officer. So I'd offer that. How you do in the job you're in is going to lead to more opportunities. And then there's a wide range of different areas across logistics where we need leaders. We need senior leaders, and you can help have a say in how you chart that path.
Thank you, sir. So when charting that path, would it be recommended to try to go into one of the 10 multi-frames that was discussed earlier and stick with that one, or try to hit as many as possible to be well versed?
Yeah, I think early in your career, breadth is really important. So, and again, you can get a lot of breadth in just an LRS. But I mean breadth in getting a wide range of different experiences as you're younger. And then as you get older, it will, if you're trying to chart a path, I would say let it be based on what you're passionate about, not based on what you're going to get promoted in, right? So if you have this breadth of experience as a lieutenant or as a lieutenant and a captain where you've operated or worked in 5 or 6 of those different strategic areas, and you say, I am really passionate about war planning. Like I love being an installation deployment officer. Okay, then let's have a conversation. Then sit down with your commander, sit down with your DT rep, sit down with force development or talent management team and say, how do I chart a path through war planning? But don't base it on promotion, base it on what you're passionate about, because what you're passionate about will translate to performance, and performance will translate to promotion. It isn't the other way around. It isn't I'm going to go this path because I'm going to get promoted. Because if your focus is only on promotion, people are going to see that for what it is, and they're not going to appreciate that when it comes time to be, leaders and put others above yourself, to think of someone besides yourself in that process. So that's what I would offer. Don't make it about promotion. Make it about what you're passionate about, and the promotion will come.
Thanks, sir.
So I had a follow-up question to what you kind of just said. I guess how do you you talk a lot about performing and succeeding, but what metrics do you do for promotions and stuff look for in terms of logistics as an officer? How do you succeed and how do you perform as a logistics?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it'll depend entirely upon the squadron that you're in. So, in a logistics readiness squadron, there's a lot of different ways that we calculate, if you use the term calculate performance. Some of it is subjective. So it's going to be, the commander's assessment or the operations officer's assessment of how well do you brief, how well do you interact with others, how well do you work as a teammate, how well do you lead your subordinates, right? And as much as I would love to say that that's a calculation, it's really not. It's an assessment, right? It's not a calculation, it's an assessment. There are other elements though, like how is your flight doing when it comes to the metrics that an LRS is responsible for. And I say it's different because an LRS, Logistics Readiness Squadron, is going to have different metrics than an aerial port squadron, is going to have different metrics than an air mobility squadron. But how your flight is doing how the section that you're in charge of is doing. And then there's other measurables like, are you guys getting your performance reports turned in on time? Are the decorations that you're writing coming out of there going to be, are they good? Are they solid products, or do they need a lot of help? What's your communication like? Is it open and transparent? Is it well written? Is it articulate, or is it not? And so there are both kinds. There are assessments that your supervisor, your OPSO, your squadron commander will make, and then there are metrics that are how is your flight doing relative to history and relative to some of the other organizations that you have in the squadron. But it's one of those things that there isn't like a metric for logistics. It's a metric depending on what your mission set is in the squadron that you're in.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll say just on the other thing, as you're comparing different career fields, one of the things you'll notice is we have a wide range of different, like there's not a lot of answering definitively because logistics is kind of pervasive and there's a lot of different roles and responsibilities that you can have as a logistician. So in some of the other career fields like acquisition, there's a very specific career path in acquisitions, right? And it is very specific down to this is what you're going to do for this long. This is what school you go to at the end of that. At the end of that, here are the people who do well, go to these. The people who don't do well, go to this. I mean, it's much more explicit. And in the logistics community, it's very much, it's very much all over the place. We have people all over the place doing all kinds of different things. And so it is very difficult to give you as a second lieutenant, these are the 5 things that you need to do as a logistician. I mean, you could be asked to do 100 different things as a lieutenant in the logistics career field, but there's goodness in that too, in that it develops a pattern of thought and it develops an ability to solve really complex problems, to work with people, to be able to get some things done. And I think you'll find that as you grow and develop in the community, you'll be recognized for some of those skills, particularly at a senior leader level, in ways that you maybe weren't as a lieutenant.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, sir. Captain Cabrera here, fellow 21R and also an AFROTC instructor. You talk about how it's very difficult to give a firm answer because of the different paths within a career field, but could you talk about just some general expectations for a brand new second lieutenant, regardless of what unit they're assigned to?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I might give that to either Jess or Erica, only because I'm about 20 years removed from being a second lieutenant, and I think that one of them. Also, I've been talking way too much, so I'll give them the opportunity. What are your expectations? And Jess or Erica, either one, feel free to jump in for a second, or Liz too. I see you online too. So, what are some of your expectations for a new lieutenant coming into the squadron?
Yes, sir. I can jump on that. And Jess, you can follow up if I
Go
miss
ahead,
anything.
Erica.
So I'd say what Colonel Campbell touched on before, like finding a senior NCO to learn as much as you can. Definitely do that, but also get out there and get to know your people. You're going to have airmen that might be the same age as you, might be older than you. Go to their work center, learn what they're doing, and just show a curiosity as to what the flight that you're leading is doing. And that'll take you far, not only with your commander, but also with your people. We're in the people business. I know that was one of our last slides, but it really is true. Like an LRO is there to serve your people, and you do that by learning as much as you can as a second lieutenant, whether that is from your airman or from your chief in the flight. Just be a sponge and absorb all the information that they're going to give you. Jess, do you want to add anything?
Spot on. I think no matter what commissioning source you come from, whether it's USAFA, ROTC, or OTS, you are told from the first day you arrive, you are a leader. And that is true. You are a leader. But a second lieutenant needs to be more of a sponge because you're going to be surrounded by leaders, and they're going to range from chiefs to colonels. An A1C who's been in for 6 months, may be a very strong leader. Don't ever discount your people just because of the rank on their chest. Learn something from every single person. And as you get more experienced and get, some different situations and experiences under your belt, you're going to become just a better leader. But stay humble. That's my it's my requirement for a second lieutenant.
Yeah, I'd offer a couple other things. One, there's going to be like, I expect you to do your training. So get your CFETP and get started, right? And you don't have to wait for someone to tell you what to do. Like your career field education and training plan is going to have your airman development plan. So I expect lieutenants to hop in and start learning as much as they can and follow the CFETP, right? It's published for a reason. Second, I would say look for opportunities to grow and develop. So your first 6 months or so in the Air Force is really going to be based on learning your CFETP, spending some time in there, doing your loop training. You'll know about all this stuff if you become an LRO, which I hope you will be. And then going to school where you're going to go to your tech school and get a basic understanding of the career field. But coming out of tech school, when you come out of tech school and you've finished your loop training, start getting involved in as many different things as you can. Show interest in the career field. Show interest in doing things that are above and beyond and outside necessarily the scope. In addition to understanding and knowing the core business. So, and I think Jess and Eric already talked on that, but get to know your people, get into the business, understand the core business of logistics, and then look to broaden and take on different responsibilities, and follow up with your training. I think if you do those three things as a lieutenant, you'll be in good shape.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I realize we've been going for an hour. Thanks for the few of you who've been hanging out with us the whole time. So I appreciate it. You are absolutely welcome to reach out to us anytime. I don't want to miss anyone. Any last minute questions here?
Not a question, but probably reattack to your last point of getting involved. So for those cadets online, this is more of a bonus quest, if you will. A couple ways you can get involved after you learn your core disciplines for LRS. You have this great organization called Logistics Officer Association. Big networking opportunities for fellow logistics readiness types. And if you want to get involved on base, there's Company Grade Officer Council, which gets you the breadth of career fields across an installation. Don't focus on that initially. That'll be your reward once you get into your LRO studies and learn the job.
Thanks for that. Well, team, again, thanks for some awesome questions. I really appreciate having a few minutes with you today. And well, I guess we can hang out here for a little bit if you have any follow-up questions. But again, appreciate your time and thanks for serving.